In 1914, World War I broke out and a new type of fighting was put into more common use. This strategy of fighting is known as trench warfare. Trench warfare is a type of warfare in which troops are highly immune to small arms fire and are better sheltered from artillery from enemy fire. Trench warfare is an excellent defense mechanism. By staying in the trenches, soldiers are better protected and less likely to lose their lives. Trench warfare was a common strategy used in World War I and was rather effective. Soldiers had different routines that they followed in the trenches. However, there were problems that arose in the trenches where conditions were not pleasant. The current strategies and the strategy of trench warfare also differ largely. Trench warfare was something that many soldiers in World War I faced.
The soldiers working in the trenches in World War I had specific things that they had to do each day. Soldiers' daily life started an hour before dawn and with the morning stand to. After this, the soldiers would clean their rifles, and then they went to breakfast. After breakfast, they would be inspected by the platoon commander. Then they would be assigned chores. These chores included refilling the sandbags, draining the trenches, and repairing the boards on the bottom of the trench. The soldiers in the trenches were only permitted to take care of personal things at night. Some men were sent to get rations and water for other soldiers.
Trench warfare was a common strategy that was used in World War I. However, trench warfare brought forth many problems for the soldiers fighting in them. Over 200,000 men died in the trenches used in World War I. Many men died in battle. However, many died from the terrible conditions and disease. There was poisonous gas, rotting sandbags, stagnant mud, cigarette smoke, and cooking food. Rats accompanied the men fighting in the trenches. The rats were there by the millions and were filling themselves with human remains until they could grow to be the size of a cat. Men attempted to kill the rats, but they kept reproducing. Lice were also extremely common in the trenches and were basically impossible to get rid of. The lice would cause trench fever. This is a painstaking disease that starts suddenly with a lot of pain and then is followed with high fever. Recovery away from the trenches could take up to 12 weeks. Men got a fungal foot infection called trench foot due to the bad conditions. Trench foot could become gangrenous and led to an amputation. Conditions in the trenches of World War I were purely awful. There were rotting bodies that were not buried in proper graves. Men did not wash for weeks because of the lack of facilities. There were also overflowing cesspits. Creosote and chloride of lime were used to get rid of infection and disease. There was a horrid mixture of terrible smells, dead bodies, infection, and rodents. Men had to face terrible conditions and thousands of lives were lost.
In World War I, trench warfare was a very popular form of combat that was commonly used. However, today, we no longer use this as much. We only use it when the situation dictates. With the progression of technology, we have come up with easier and more efficient ways to battle to put to use. Also, the use of satellites has made a revolution for navigation and communication facilities. We now try to give more information to the commander of what is happening in the actual wartime, and our space technologies have a big part in helping with this.
Trench warfare was used as a defensive as well as an offensive fighting strategy in World War I. The use of trenches did, in fact, have many different advantages. However, the trenches did cause different problems to the soldiers. Trench warfare is not commonly used today, but did prove successful with winning the First World War. This bibliography shows the works we cited in doing our research.